Welcome to Your College Bound Kid,
a podcast for parents, college counselors, students, and anyone who wants a weekly deep dive into the world of college admissions.
Hi, I'm Hillary Dickman. I'm the Senior Assistant Director of Admission for Marketing and Communications at Colorado College, and I'm also a parent of 2 college students.
I'm Lisa, and I'm a clinical psychologist and college counselor. I have a daughter in college, a daughter in high school, and a son in middle school. After 30 years in Chicago, we recently moved to North Carolina.
My name is Mark. I'm a college coach in Atlanta and the parent of 2 daughters. Karis, a graduate of Davidson College, and she is the founder of the Spanish tutoring company, SpanishHelpToday.com. And Joy is a wellness coach at the Keenan Flagler Business School at the University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill. And I'm so blessed to be able to work alongside both my beautiful daughters at School Match for You, college counseling firm that I founded in 2010. Friends, Orlando was great, but I'm glad to be back in my home studio for today's recording. And you know, friends, we are continuing to get actually great feedback about the case studies we're airing. And I'm so happy because it's a little risky doing this. I mean, trying to do some more creative things, some work, some don't. I'm going to play one of the responses that came in this week, and then I'll have several comments after you hear the message.
Hi, YCBK team, including Mark as your fearless leader. I just wanted to leave a note and a request, if that's okay. The note is tremendous thanks to all of the participants in, and particularly the admissions counselors involved in this case study that you guys have been playing online. I finished listening to the Zoom this weekend, and what struck me most wasn't just the wonderful back and forth. Well, that was wonderful and was amazing. What struck me was how much time and effort had to have gone into the preparing of this, from the creation of the college and its profile to the balancing of different kinds of students with different interests and experiences in different areas and ways of life. An exorbitant amount of work must have gone into making this happen. And that's not evident from the presentation. And that's another tribute to everybody involved, that it isn't evident from the presentation. It looks natural. It looks like you've done this before. And that's really, really amazing and wonderful. I can't thank those admissions counselors enough. And so my ask or request is that we have other listeners reach out directly, whether it's email, however those admissions counselors prefer. And hopefully they don't want to get deluged, but would like to hear from folks. But that folks do reach out to specifically say thank you, because enough thanks couldn't be enough and are certainly due to them. Thanks, and hope all is well in YCBK land.
Friends, I could not agree more with this caller. You know, I suggested to Hillary that we do this. I didn't know she was going to go all out like this. I could not be happier. And I just want to personally thank all 3 of our fearless leaders, our mission officers who spearheaded this, starting with Hillary, and I agree with the caller. Send Hillary an email. You can reach her at hdickman@coloradocollege.edu. And reach out to Kate Stricklan as well. That's Catherine, KATHERINE.STRICKLAN @colorado.edu. And Grace Robertson-Lloyd from Grinnell. You could reach Grace at LLOYDGRA2 at grinnell.edu. And Grinnell is GRINNELL, 2 N's, 2 L's. Now, I'm going to put this in the show notice as well. I know you're probably driving, walking the dog, exercising. You don't have time to write emails down. Now, speaking of Kate, depending on when you're listening to this, Kate, Susan, and I may be recording several answers to speak pipe questions you sent in. That's right. We got a big recording Monday, October 6th, the day this goes live. So we're trying to bring you more voices from people who are actually doing the work now, file reading. That's one of the things that came, clearly manifests itself as I read through some of the comments on the survey responses. You love hearing from admission officers in the mix, reading files now. We never had anybody really from a flagship school. Public research universities can function quite differently at times than liberal arts colleges. So we appreciate having the balance. We've got Andy Strickler, who, by the way, Andy and I will be recording coming up here in a couple of weeks. I think you're going to be excited about that content. We've got Hillary coming from a liberal arts perspective, and now we've got Kate, who will be in our rotation. And you're going to hear other voices as well. I've got a recording coming up that I think you guys are really going to find helpful, particularly you juniors, and that's with Heath Einstein, who's the Chief Enrollment Officer at TCU. He's agreed to come on every 6 months. We've already recorded a segment on tips about teacher recommendations, so that's another voice that'll be in our rotation. Now, as for Grace, I don't know if Grace knows this yet, but I sent her an email early Sunday morning, and I said, Grace, you are awesome, and I'd like to interview you. So our longtime listeners might notice this, but I've always been a little fascinated by the role of the regional admission officer. That's the person who lives in a location other than when the school is. So like Grace's station, she's Denver-based, right? Even though she's with Cornell. And so, for example, when I interviewed Tom Becker from Pitt, now that was about 5 years ago, I asked Tom a bunch of questions about regionals because he actually spearheaded the whole regional program that Pitt uses. He brought it to them. So I asked him a bunch of questions. And then when I interviewed Fabrizio DeLuzio, who's over Tennessee's admission office, I asked him a bunch of questions about their expanded use of regionals, which, by the way, was the number one thing that he accredited for how they had gone from 17,000 applications to 60,000 in 7 years, was their use of regionals. And then most recently, when I interviewed Greg Zeiser, Chief Enrollment Officer at Elon, we talked about their use of regionals. So I've always had a little bit of fascination with regionals. Twice in the last 3 years, well, let's see, I guess it was 2022 and 2024, at the NatCat conference, I went to sessions on regionals, but I've never actually interviewed somebody who is a regional. And I'd love to interview Grace, hoping that will work out for her with her schedule. Well, she's got a lot going on, but lots to ask her. I'd like for you guys to learn, how is it similar to the sort of home-based admission officer? How is it different? And most importantly, how students can take advantage of a regional if you've got one in your area, and how you can know if you've got a regional in your area. So those are some of the things I'm hoping we can bring to you. So hopefully you'll get to meet Grace and Kate in a more extensive role beyond just the case studies. Now, back to the case study. So, Hillary and I were talking, and she had a really good idea. She's like, I think we should have a wrap-up episode to tie everything together. And I've been like ping-ponging in my mind all kinds of ideas. I thought, well, maybe I could have some parents on who've read through files and asked what they learned. And I'm like, no, why don't I do that with students? Bring students on, and then, but then, a lot of, especially seniors, are really busy right now. So here's what I've come up with. Any of you, if you go to speakpipe.com/YCBK to leave your question or comments before October 13th, and if you can share what you learned from this exercise, reading the files, hearing the discussion, and or if you have a question about what you saw or heard, then if you share that there, Hilly and I will kind of interact with that, and we'll have one last attempt to squeeze all the lemon out of this exercise and make it as fruitful for you as possible as far as the learning experience. And if I don't get enough responses, I already have a bunch of questions and things that I want to talk about. So we've got content for that episode.
And now it's time for a question from one of our listeners.
All right, friends, in today's episode, I'm going to answer a SpeakPipe question from a listener. I'm flying solo this week. Then we'll hear our committee discuss our third and final applicant, Layla. Let's dive in.
Hi, this is Kathy from California, and I have a question regarding your advice to high school students with regards to being varsity athletes in college. Given how much it seems like gaining real-world experience in college with things like internships, lab roles, and other research is becoming more and more important for new college grads to find their first job in their chosen field, I'm just wondering if varsity athletes are at a disadvantage given their time constraints with their sport. And so I'm just a little curious how you are advising your current high school students who might be interested in also being a student athlete in college. Thanks so much for all you do.
So there's no doubt there's truth to what you just heard, right? When you talk with employers, they will say over and over and over again, they're putting more and more emphasis on, did the person have real work experience? I can't deny that. That's indisputable and irrefutable. But there's another side to this coin. And excuse me, but I'm going to get a little biographical here. So long-term listeners know I went to Michigan State University. I ran track when I was there. And then I just got this fascination with the Bible and going deep with God. So I left there. I spent a year in Chicago, Moody Bible Institute, just trying to learn the Bible. That wasn't enough for my appetite. I went to Dallas Seminary. I was there 7.5 years, off and on. Part-time, sometimes full-time. Wasn't really the plan to be on the 7.5-year master's plan. But I did a year of college admissions. I did 3 years of market research. I got married. Like, lots of stuff happened. And then I finally launched out with an organization to start this church in Philadelphia. And 6 months into it, I realized, snap, this is not for me. I was like struggling with depression. It just wasn't like how I was wired. So I had to find a job. And at that time, Karis was, I want to say Karis was 6 weeks old, or, you're looking at a little baby down there and you got to like bring home the bacon. So I'm like, what am I going to do? So I had a pretty big sports card business, basketball, football, hockey, baseball, like really big. Like when I was 16, the newspaper ran this huge article with me, like cards everywhere. And I sold those cards to pay for grad school. And I still have a bunch of them. And I just done a lot of stuff related to sales, different part-time sales jobs here and there. So I always kind of knew that I could sell. So I reached out to an employment agency to get a job in sales because I knew I could make a decent amount in sales to pay the bills for the family. Make a long story short, I ended up getting hired by Dun & Bradstreet. And one of the things they told me after they hired me was, we love the fact that you ran track at Michigan State. We like athletes. We look for athletes. Because athletes are competitive, athletes are driven, athletes are highly motivated, athletes have discipline. They know how to work hard. They've been knocked down because you don't always win. So they've learned grit and resilience, dealing with losing. And a lot of employers value the skill set that's formed in athletics. One of the families I worked with about 10 years ago, and I'm going to say more about him later at the end. But the dad had played football at West Point. And he's like, I learned more in playing football at West Point than I think almost anything I've done. So there are a lot of employers that value that. Joy, I've shared this with you before, but she played on like super, super competitive basketball teams. Like some were ranked in the top 10 of the country. And her 7th grade team was ranked second in Georgia. Georgia's kind of a powerhouse of women's basketball. They had 7 Division I players on that team. And one of her good friends went on and played at College of Charleston. And so at times it was hard because it's like pretty all consuming. But she came out and landed an incredible software engineering job. So no doubt internships and co-ops are being emphasized these days. Can't dispute it. But different people have different skill sets that they bring. And there's definitely a group of employers out there who value the training that an athlete gets. And, there's also a unique network that is formed within the alumni community of the school if you are an athlete that can be very, very helpful when it comes to the job market. So the thing about varsity sports that I've learned at the collegiate level, and this is especially true for Division I, but it's true for D3 as well, you have to really want to do it. Somebody told me a while ago, either sports has to kind of be your meal ticket. In other words, like, I couldn't have afforded college if I didn't get this scholarship or get this opportunity. So I'm going to go do the sport. And it is what it is. It's kind of like your trampoline. Or you need to kind of be like a fish in water when you're playing your sport. And when you're not doing your sport, you're miserable because it is really time consuming. It's like you're getting up at 5 a.m., may have 4 hours of practice, and you're not going to the parties and doing all the things a lot of other people are doing. And of course, there are degrees of this, right? Because there's D1 and there's high D1, mid D1, low D1, there's D2, There's NAIA, high, mid, low. Like there are different levels of commitment. I don't want to paint one stroke of the brush and make it sound like every school is the same level of commitment, but there are a lot of lessons learned there, and there's a powerful network and a powerful bond that's formed. And if you love it, it's great. But I've seen too many people who did their sport and didn't enjoy their college experience because it's like, this is a job. It was fun when I was in high school. It's a job. So that's normally what I say to people, like, how much do you love it? And take advantage of all the resources and the networking within the institution. While it's true you may not have the opportunity to do the internship, sometimes you can, especially with D3s. But there are other ways to get where you're trying to go. And thanks to the generosity of the Princeton Review for sending in that SpeakPipe question, you are going to get your choice of one of the following 4 books: College Admissions 101, Essays That Kicked Apps, The Best 390 Colleges, Princeton Review Digital SAT Prep. Now, in order to get your book, you just need to send me an email at mark@schoolmatch4u.com, put Princeton Book Giveaway in the subject line, and in the body of the email, put the title of the book you want and put the episode number where we discussed your question and just share a brief description of the question that you asked. All right, let's transition and have the committee talk to you about Layla, our third and final student.
And now this week's interview with a special guest.
All right, let's keep going though. So we've got Layla from Lake Washington High School. 91% of these students go to 4-year colleges. She's been on campus for a tour. So our first student visited virtually, second student has had no engagement, third student has been on campus for a tour. Does somebody want to give give us a general understanding of what Lake Washington High School is like?
Sure, I can really quick. So Lake Washington High School, medium-sized public high in Washington State. It seems to have a lot of different extracurriculars. It's an institution with quite a few APs, 25 in total, and 70% of students are passing. Pretty good when it comes to the average SAT and ACT scores, which are listed there, as well as the GPA distribution. And it's ranked as Washington's top 10 public high schools. So it is a very reputable high school with a 20-to-1 student-faculty ratio. Majority of the teachers have master's degrees, and usually in classes that they're taking, and 90% are getting into 4-year college or universities.
Yeah. And I love this GPA distribution. I love a GPA distribution. I wish that I could see them everywhere. It helps you so much to contextualize the student and to understand what kind of, like, if there's grade inflation happening or just where this individual student is falling that you're reading. In my office, we would call this a power public school. That's the term that we use. All right. So this is a long counselor evaluation. Somebody distilled this for us. What do we need to know out of this counselor evaluation?
I would say this is the first place where we see a theme that's repeated about Layla, that she's both ambitious and a go-getter, but very generous in spirit and loves to see her classmates succeed as well.
Mm-hmm.
It's not always a combination you see. And she seems very active both academically and extracurricularly, which is one of our profile highlights.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. So all good things there. And then we get into her transcript, and I'm going to scroll down a little bit so we can start with 9th. It looks like she's taking 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, maybe. I don't know if that freshman seminar, I guess I wouldn't count that as an academic course. So 5 academic courses, it looks like, probably each year, and maybe even more than that. And by the time we get to 12th grade, she's taking 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 AP classes plus a biotech and ethics class. So a lot of really tough classes here. She's really maximizing what's available to her at Lake Washington. And her grades look pretty good too, right? She's definitely got more A's than B's, just like a couple B's every year. So academically, she seems like she's going to be really well prepared. And she's got good variety in the AP courses that she's taking. She's really hitting all of the different areas, from math to English to science to language. So excellent. Oh, and AP comparative gov. So all 5 areas, right? It's pretty hardcore academics. All right. She's an all-star so far. So then we see she's from Mercer Island, born in Bellevue. Here's her family. So parents look like they're both pretty successful. They both went to very highly selective schools. They both have business degrees.
And she has a brother at Cascadia.
Yes. Good call. Yeah. So her older brother is at Cascadia. Makes it easy for her to come visit and do a tour, right?
Yeah.
I will say on like the parent information for a student such as this, like, so we see like parents went to Harvard, multiple elite institutions. Sometimes I'll see that, and then I'll see the student's transcript has lots of C's or maybe not high rigor, and that's when I have to be really careful not to make an assumption of, like, why don't you have straight A's? You're the parents, you're the child of Harvard educated people, or like, I can't believe you didn't take you're only in grade level math, because you need to stop yourself sometimes and think, would I think the same things if I didn't know your parents' educational background? Now, this student seems seemingly as all-star as the parents, but every once in a while you get that kind of mismatch, and I think we all are just really careful not to hold it against them.
Yeah. And also not to privilege a student who already obviously is coming from a privileged background, not to sort of just give them the benefit of the doubt just because they're coming from that background, but offering the benefit of the doubt to all the students who we read. Yeah, Nishant.
I guess, like, on the flip side, right? Like, I know we talked about yield a little while ago. So in this kind of a situation, if the student didn't have a brother that went to the school, and we saw the parents, schools that they attended, would that have maybe changed the viewpoint in terms of, like, yeah, we might not be able to yield the student?
I would actually say that out loud to one of my supervisors. This is going to be a really hard student to yield, and therefore I want to admit them so I can go after them and get them, because it becomes like a personal challenge for me. I know that's not the same everywhere, but yeah, like I think that it sometimes can play in for schools that are really protective of yield. And other times you just kind of scroll through, because really there are so many students who maybe both their parents went to University of Michigan, and is anyone like more passionate about their alma mater than, Michigan alumni. But you have to assume that the student wouldn't be applying if they weren't at least somewhat interested. Kate and Grace, do you have different takes on that?
I would say it is hard to interpret the sibling. I think it either could be a good sign again for yield, like, oh, I mean, like, I already know that the school is great because my older sibling is there, or it could be that there's a backstory that we're not privy to that's like, my parents are making me apply to the same school because they, it's been a good fit for so and so, but there's no way I'm applying, but there's no way I'm going to the same school as my older blah blah. So I think it's hard to know unless they tell you later. I can't wait to go to games with my older sister. I think it could cut either way, and you can't really predict totally.
Yeah, I always like to say, imagine flipping it, and let's say that instead of the sibling attending Cascadia, they attended a rival of Cascadia. That doesn't mean that the student doesn't want to go to Cascadia, because maybe the brother applied to both, right? We don't see where the brother applied. We just see where he's going. So it's a dangerous assumption in any direction to think that just because a student is a legacy or goes to a rival school, or their brother goes to a large public school, but we're a small liberal arts, everyone's an individual and a different person. So we try to really, really avoid those assumptions. You're right that sometimes some schools will use that as a point of yield, But even that can be a dangerous assumption to make, because even twins, right? They're different humans, even if they're identical in so many different ways. They are different people, and they're going to have different opinions on where they want to go to school, and you can't just make an assumption. So it's tough not to. It's something we actively train our readers to be attentive to, so that they don't make that sort of dangerous assumption, which could privilege or, almost work against a student if you take those assumptions into account, like in the case of a rival school. So
Thank you.
Yeah, I think it's really easy as you're reading to like play the what if game. And sometimes those what ifs kind of stick in my head. And then once I see where a student actually chooses to go, then I'm like, oh, like I knew that was going to happen. And sometimes it's the complete opposite, right? And so for us, it's not a part of how it's not something we include in our review process because it's so hard to predict. All right, so let's see. We see here that the student participated in the Center for Talented Youth at Johns Hopkins. There, you'll see sometimes when a student does like a summer pre-college program, sometimes that can show up on here if it's a pre-college program where there was credit. And then sometimes, and some of those are pay to play, right? And some of them are like the Center for Talented Youth where you have to like test and apply to get in, and they're really tough. So those can be very different things. And just because a student's been admitted to the Center for Talented Youth doesn't mean they're automatically going to be admitted to Johns Hopkins or Cascadia or anywhere else. But it does tell you that they're pursuing something that requires some real additional intellectual curiosity and sort of tenacity on their own in the summers, separate from school, which is always nice to see. There's the SAT score. There's that perfect math score that she's proud of that we saw the counselor write about. So 1,500, that's an excellent SAT score. And then we've got activities. What do we see here? Anything that stands out?
Yeah, I wanted to get your take on some of this. So obviously, like, fantastic activities list, seems to have done a whole lot. What I noticed is there are a lot of hours in here, but like in her counselor recommendation, the counselor talked about how she did soccer. Which I would assume takes a lot of time. It's not on here, even though there was space. They also said that she was in Interact, which is one of the service organizations. I just felt like I saw a lot of inconsistencies across her application. And I don't know
like how do you do all this?
Reconcile that. I don't know.
Yeah, that can be a hard thing when we're reading and it's like, oh my gosh, are you Superman? How do you fit all of this in? Right. And so I take a student at their word and I trust that they're really doing all the things that they're doing. And I also don't know like how these things fit together. I mean, 30 weeks a year is a lot to be doing Science Olympiad and 30 weeks a year to be the founder of the Biological Research Club. But I don't know how those overlap, if those are things that she's doing, all during the school year. How much of that happens, like the Biological Research Club, is that happening mostly during school time and she's doing it at lunch, or is it happening outside of school? We don't really get all of those details, which can be tough for trying to put all of these things together and understand how is a student really fitting all of this into their schedule. Yeah, Kate.
It's possible that the student might have gotten some advice that they should present as really spiky to really stand out in that way instead of well-rounded. And that could be why they left off soccer. This might have been the strategy that the student or someone in the student's life thought that they should take for their activities list. Yeah. But
Make it all academic.
Yeah. And very research heavy, very science heavy. Yeah, it's intriguing.
Yeah. And I mean, a lot of times we'll tell students to present to us what is most important to them also, right? So if soccer wasn't important to her, she might not have thought that it needed to go on her application.
Yeah.
All right. We'll keep going. Okay. Here is the essay. What do we see in here? It's the service trip essay.
I thought it highlighted the interest in biology, which really came through. If comparing it to certainly the first student, it didn't seem particularly reflective. It felt almost like a moment in time. Like, I did this thing, found some insects, made some notes, which wasn't, I don't think there's anything wrong with that necessarily, but it didn't really tell me much about her other than kind of reinforcing this idea that she likes insects, she likes biology or reptiles or whatever it is, and she likes biology, but it feels somewhat like a missed opportunity to explain more about her.
Yeah, that's a great take. It's so interesting because usually when we see an essay that starts out being about a service trip, it then doesn't like veer into the world of science. And so it's fun to have a different take on that, right? Where the things that she's experiencing sort of through the channel of a service trip, but a very different outcome than what we typically see. But it does feel like it's, like Kate said, it's adding to the pointiness of her as a student who is super duper into science, which can be great. And also, like, you kind of wonder, what are we missing anything? Is there another side to you that we're not getting to see because you haven't chosen to highlight it?
Yeah, I think unpacking the why of the interest would have been something to highlight that could have been interesting. Like, why do you care about?
Yeah. I tell students that a lot when they're asking about their essays, and like what I'm really looking for is some help figuring out how you became who you are, right? And that can come through the essay in a really nice way. And we're seeing who she is, but not so much like how she got there. All right. And then no disciplinary issues. And then her supplement. So the big question at this point for us is, she's a super pointy science student from what we're seeing, even though she's capable in all areas. Why does she want to go to a liberal arts college? Not that we're not good at science, right? We're very good at science, but most of our students are also interested in some other things. Is she? Why does she want this? So what does she tell us about why she wants liberal arts?
Does say that she wants like a more intimate learning environment, it seems. That's a big part of it.
Mm-hmm. And that can be great for students who are super driven in science and want to end up going to get a PhD and want to develop close relationships with their PhD full professors their very first semester of college, right? Like a liberal arts college is a great place for that.
Again, on this one, I know I said it before about, but she did mention Cascadia.
Yeah.
But then, like, what she said about it, I could have put my thumb over Cascadia, and she could have been talking about any college, and she talking about, oh, it's so prestigious and world renowned professors. Tell me which one, or something more, if you're going to mention Cascadia. I mean, she didn't have to.
Yeah, for when they're asked to mention the college, I would definitely want to see something more specific than that, right? Like, what is a professor doing research in that is a specific focus for you that you're interested in? Who has that? Who is that professor?
This essay, I mean, we have our brand new program in interdisciplinary studies that has a research heavy element. So maybe she would be a great fit for that and one of like the pioneering members of that. At the same time, I felt like this essay could have been copied and pasted. And if the prompt was, why do you want to attend a tier 1 research university? Again, like you said, just editing out the name, it would have fit that prompt perfectly too.
Yeah. And those are very different institutions.
Right.
Yeah. So unfortunately, not super convincing for us. Okay. And then we've got a couple of teacher recs to look at. So this teacher had her in 9th grade and 12th grade. So Algebra 2 Honors and AP Calc, BC. Anything stand out here?
Very intellectually curious again, that, when they talked about integration and how she was putting it. I was a math major in college. That one hit me. I was like, oh, yeah, that sounds great. And then it was very consistent with the counselor's recommendation, too, kind of reinforcing what kind of student she was.
Yeah. Sometimes we read, well, at least I read recommendations. And I'm like, okay, this is more of the same of what I know. There's nothing here that's surprising me. It doesn't really add a lot because so much of this was already flushed out earlier. And then we've got bio and AP bio. So this teacher had her in 9th grade and 11th grade. Anything new here that we haven't seen yet?
Now they mentioned again that she was a very caring person for others, and only know, like, how would you read that? again, for a liberal arts institution, she picked a math teacher and a science teacher, no humanities.
Yeah. I mean, I see that she's doing really well in her humanities classes. So that the sort of proof is in the pudding in those, right? But it would be nice to hear, like, how do you engage in discussion when you're in a class that's sort of more philosophical? What's that like? Who is she in those situations? It sounds like she's great at everything she does, but those could be examples that could help give us a more well-rounded understanding of who she is, for sure.
I did like how the teacher wrote she views learning as a communal activity. That stood out to me, though.
Yeah, that does speak well to the idea of her being in a small classroom environment, right? Okay. And I think that's the end of her application. So we've gone through all three of these. And so as a listener, you can go to vote on who you would admit, who you would waitlist, and who you would deny. And so what your goal is to put yourself in the shoes of a Cascadia College admission officer and make the decision that you would make in that situation. And to be clear, like, this isn't exactly how we do this work, right? We will typically vote for who we're going to admit. We don't vote for who we're going to deny. And then we sort of wait and see how that all flushes out. But I think for the purpose of this exercise, it's a really good way to see, like, to have to kind of get to the nitty gritty of this work and see who you think is really the best fit for the college and how the interest kind of part comes in. So good luck, my friends. Kate and Grace, do you have any parting words of wisdom?
Just to emphasize, like you were saying, Hillary, that we don't typically pit students against each other like you sort of have to in these case studies. That's something, like, if you attend a case study at your student's school, that admissions officers are very quick to emphasize. It's really not Alana versus Alan versus Layla, but for the purposes of this, it might feel like that a little bit. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the parting word I would say, or words I would say, are just, hopefully this exercise gives some insight into the fact that, again, this is not cut and dry. So harkening back to what we talked about at the very beginning of this podcast episode, this is not a simple process. Everyone has opinions, and this is exactly why we have multiple people in the room making decisions on a file. If you just had one person in a vacuum making these decisions, that wouldn't be they wouldn't be able to take in all the nuances of a file or contribute their different things that they notice. Even within this small group of just us right here, we all had different opinions and thoughts on the essays, on the letters, on the transcript. We all had different things we liked or didn't like about each part of each applicant's file. And that's why it's important to do it in a committee. And that's why institutions really emphasize the use of committees with diverse perspectives and backgrounds represented within those committees, because everyone will share and contribute with those different perspectives.
For sure. Thank you, Grace. Okay, we're going to say goodbye to our podcast listeners now. Thank you so much for joining us, and we're really looking forward to seeing who you choose.
All right, friends, this concludes discussions of the three applicants. Now it's really time, if you haven't gone and read the files, to go read them. You just go to your collegemindkid.com resources tab. All right, the third thing under the resources tab is the one you want to click, YCBK admissions case studies. You'll see a link to a Google Doc, because here's the time when you need to vote. Now, we've had well over 100 people go all the way through here and vote. And I can tell you there are significant votes for every single one of our applicants. They all have a lot of votes. Next week, you'll hear from our parents. And Hillary tips her hat, too, who she would have voted for. You'll hear a spirited discussion about which candidate they think should be admitted, denied, and waitlisted. But you want to cast your vote before you hear that. And then we'll come back one more week and kind of wrap it up and tie it up. And then After that, you'll hear the Heath Einstein interview that I told you about on teacher recommendations. On Thursday's episode, Hillary shares insight from the Slate conference she attended a few months ago on new ways AI is being used in the file reading process. It's a pretty lengthy conversation. It goes like more than 40 minutes. So we're going to break that up into 2 parts. Then Dan Chambliss, author of the book, How College Works, is back for part 3 of 4. By the way, if you're one of the people who likes to hear the whole thing in its entirety, you don't like the part 1, part 2 thing, the whole Dan Chambliss interview is up at yourcollegeboundkid.com under the interviews tab, as well as, the recent interviews that we've had. They're up there now in their entirety. And we are continuing to glean insights from Lisa's visit to New England. So Lisa will be sharing her thoughts on Dartmouth College for our college spotlight. And friends, I told you that I was going to refer back to that dad who played football at West Point later in the podcast. So I worked with, him and a few of his students 10 years ago. And he shared something with me, and it really caught my attention when he said it. He's like, one of my students is straight A's. One is like mostly A's, but some B's sprinkled in. And then I've got another student who's mostly B's with the occasional C. But he said, it's my student that's mostly B's with the occasional C that I'm the most confident is going to be successful in his career. And the reason why he said that is because of his incredible people skills. So I want to close with a quote from Dave Ramsey. This is what he said. I think the lie we've told people in the marketplace is that a degree gets you a job. A degree doesn't get you a job. What gets you a job is the ability to carry yourself into that room, shake a hand, look someone in the eye, and have people skills. It's people skills that cause people to become successful. See you on Thursday, friends. And that's our show. A big thank you to you, our listeners, for tuning in this week. If you find this podcast helpful, please follow us and you will get every single episode as soon as they are released. If you want to support our podcast, you can click the share button and send it to your friends and acquaintances. You can say positive things about Your College Bound Kid on your social media feed. And you can help us stay commercial free and pay our staff by donating on the yourcollegeboundkid website. You can write a review for us on Apple or Spotify. And if you have a question or a recommendation, just go to speakpipe.com/YCBK, hit the orange button and speak. We will do our best to get your question in your own voice on an upcoming episode. I am the producer of the podcast, and I live in Metro Atlanta. We have a fantastic team that has over 200 years of admissions and counseling experience. Shout out to our co-hosts, Dr. Lisa Ruff in North Carolina, Susan Tree in Pennsylvania, Vince Garcia in California, Julia Esquivel in Massachusetts, Linda Depker in Missouri, Andy Strickler, the Chief Enrollment Officer at Connecticut College, New London, Connecticut, Hillary Dickman, an Admission Officer at Colorado College in Colorado Springs, and our International Admissions Expert, Kevin Newton in Dallas, Texas. Our sensational sound engineer is Nemanja Matvich. Our amazing music is from Victor Allen Weeks. Marketing designs from Kimberly Bloss. Our reliable webmaster is Stalionis Dimitru. Website updates are done by Joyce Stucker. Our image editor is Vlad Honchar. If you want to have a coaching session with me, just text me at 404-664-4340. If you want to reach someone else on our team, all of our bios with contact info can be found at yourcollegeboundkid.com under the About YCBK tab. If you want to get our free monthly YCBK newsletter, YCBK Plus, it is also under the About YCBK tab. If you want to see our recommended books and websites, they are on our website under the Resources tab. While you're on our website, check out our hundreds of interviews in their entirety. Check out our college spotlights, our blog, and our upcoming events. We think of you as our listening family, and we look forward to meeting with you every single Monday and every single Thursday.